7 days later, the Zephyrian homeworld burned. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the planet below. Fires covered 3 continents. The great crystal cities that had taken 1,000 years to build were now melting glass. The orbital defense platforms that had protected Zephyrian space for centuries were twisted metal floating in the dark. "Final count, Admiral," reported Captain Davis. "Zephyrian military casualties, 800,000 dead, 2 million captured. Civilian casualties, minimal. Most population centers were evacuated before bombardment." Susan nodded. Humans did not make war on civilians, even when angry. But they made very thorough war on anyone who threatened their children. What about their colonies? All 17 colony worlds have surrendered. Their fleets are destroyed. Total Zephyrian military vessels remaining, 0. Susan looked at the burning world one more time. Once 12 billion Zephyrians had lived across 20 star systems. Now fewer than 1 million remained, scattered on prison ships or refugee stations. An entire civilization had been reduced to almost nothing in 1 week, all because they had pointed weapons at human children. On Harmony Point, life was slowly returning to normal. The cultural festival had been finished 3 days after the rescue. Katie Morrison had completed her presentation about dolphins to an audience that now included several alien species who had never heard of Earth's ocean mammals. But everything was different now. Every alien parent held their children a little tighter. Every diplomat spoke a little more carefully when humans were present. The peaceful mask was gone. Everyone could see what lay underneath. Jake Morrison found his daughter in the station's garden. She was sitting by the fountain, feeding small fish that swam in the clear water. Her friend Zick sat beside her, his 6 arms moving gracefully as he scattered food on the surface. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Jake asked, sitting down next to them. Katie looked up at her father with serious blue eyes. "I am sad for the Zephyrian children," she said. "They did not do anything wrong, but now their homes are gone." Jake felt his heart break a little. His 8-year-old daughter understood something that many adults missed. War always hurt the innocent along with the guilty. "You are right to feel sad," he said. "Good people always feel sad when others suffer, even enemies." Zick spoke in his musical voice. "My parents say the Zephyrians broke the most important law in the galaxy. They say humans had to punish them or other bad people might try the same thing." Katie nodded slowly. "I understand why it had to happen, but I still feel sad." Ambassador Carter joined them by the fountain. She looked older than she had a week ago. The stress of managing a galactic crisis had aged her. "Katie," she said gently, "would you like to know what happened to Commander Krelt and the other Zephyrians who took you hostage?" Katie looked up with curious eyes. "Are they dead?" "No. They are in prison on a human world. They will stay there for the rest of their lives. But they are alive." "What about General Vextar?" Carter was quiet for a moment. "The general is different. He was old enough to remember the warnings about never harming human children. He knew better, but he let it happen anyway. He was executed this morning." Jake put his arm around his daughter. These were hard truths for a child to understand, but Katie was growing up in a galaxy where such truths mattered. "The other species are scared now," Carter continued. "They remember why humans are left alone to do what we want. They remember why no one challenges us when we make rules." That evening, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. Representatives from 46 species gathered to discuss what had happened. The Zephyrian seat sat empty. Elder Korth of the Carathian Union spoke first. His crystal crown caught the light as he addressed the assembly. "Fellow beings, we have witnessed the awakening of humanity's true nature. For 3 centuries we lived, under their protection, thinking they had become like us. We were wrong." Counselor Vex of the Andromedan Republic nodded her 7 heads in agreement. "The human military capability exceeds our worst estimates. Their hidden fleet numbers in the thousands. Their weapons can destroy planets. How did we not know this?" Ambassador Carter stood at the human podium. She looked small and fragile compared to the massive alien representatives around her. But every being in that chamber knew she spoke for the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "You did not know because we did not want you to know," she said simply. "We wanted peace. We wanted trade and friendship and cooperation. We still want these things." "But at what cost?" demanded Senator Threx of the Centauri Alliance. "You have destroyed an entire civilization over the actions of a few extremists." Carter's eyes grew cold. "They threatened our children. That is not extremism. That is an act of war against our entire species." The chamber fell silent. Every representative understood. Human children were not just individuals. They were symbols of humanity's future. Threatening them was like threatening the human species itself. Elder Korth spoke again. "What assurance do we have that humans will not turn their weapons on us next?" "The same assurance you have always had," Carter replied. "Do not threaten human children. Follow that one simple rule and you have nothing to fear from us." The vote was unanimous. The first law of the galaxy was formally written down for the first time. Every species would teach their young about it. Every military academy would include courses about it. Every diplomat would memorize it. Never harm human children. Never threaten them. Never use them as weapons against their parents. The law was simple. The penalty for breaking it was absolute. A month later, Katie Morrison returned to her normal life. She went to school with alien friends from many worlds. She learned about different cultures and strange planets. She played games that mixed human rules with alien traditions, but now her alien friends treated her differently. They were still friendly, still kind. But there was something new in their eyes when they looked at her. Respect, fear, understanding. Katie Morrison was not just a human child anymore. She was a symbol of the most protected class of beings in the galaxy. She was living proof of what happened when someone crossed the line that should never be crossed. One evening, as Katie helped her father prepare dinner in their quarters, she asked a question that showed how much she had grown up. "Dad, do you think we are the bad guys now?" Jake stopped cutting vegetables and looked at his daughter. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Well, we destroyed a whole planet because some people scared us. We made millions of Zephyrians homeless. Some of the kids at school say their parents think humans are bullies now." Jake sat down next to his daughter and took her small hands in his larger ones. "Katie, do you remember the story about the sleeping dragon?" She nodded. It was one of her favorite bedtime stories. The dragon slept peacefully in its cave. It bothered no one. Travelers could pass safely as long as they did not steal from the dragon's treasure. For years, people lived in peace near the dragon. But then the thieves came, Katie said, continuing the story. "Right. And what happened to the thieves?" "The dragon woke up and burned them all to ashes. And after that," Katie thought for a moment, "the dragon went back to sleep, and people were more careful not to steal from dragons." Jake smiled. "Humans are like that dragon, sweetheart. We sleep peacefully. We bother no one. But we have treasure that we protect absolutely. Our children. Our children. The Zephyrians tried to steal our treasure, so we woke up and showed them what happens to thieves." Katie was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Are we going back to sleep now?" "Yes, sweetheart. We are going back to sleep. But everyone will remember what happens when someone tries to wake us up the wrong way." That night, Katie looked out her bedroom window at the stars. Somewhere out there on refugee ships and prison stations, Zephyrian children were also looking at stars. They were homeless and scared because their leaders had made a terrible choice. Katie felt sad for them, but she also understood why it had to happen. The galaxy was a dangerous place. Strong people had to protect weak people, even if it meant doing terrible things sometimes. She thought about dolphins in Earth's oceans helping each other and protecting their young. She thought about human ships hidden in the dark spaces between stars, waiting to protect human families. She was 8 years old, and she was the most protected child in the galaxy. Not because she was special, but because she was human, and Humans protected their children with a fury that could burn worlds. The first law of the galaxy was written in Zephyrian ashes. It would not be forgotten again. Katie closed her eyes and went to sleep, safe in the knowledge that her family would always come for her, no matter what. Even if they had to cross the galaxy to do it. Even if they had to wake the dragon and let it burn the world. Some lines should never be crossed. The Zephyrians had learned that lesson. So had everyone else. The galaxy was at peace again, and it would stay that way as long as everyone remembered the price of breaking humanity's one absolute rule. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the dark screen in front of him. The bridge of his ship was quiet except for the soft hum of failing systems. Outside the thick windows, he could see the enemy ships moving like deadly sharks around Earth. They had been there for 18 long months, cutting off all supplies and destroying anything that tried to leave or enter the home system. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. He had not slept well in weeks. None of his crew had. The Zephyrian Collective had brought more ships than anyone thought possible. Their advanced technology made human weapons look like toys. Every day brought news of another defeat, another lost battle, another group of brave pilots who would never come home. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "We're getting reports from the outer patrol. 3 more supply ships were destroyed trying to reach Mars Colony." Jake nodded slowly. Mars Colony had been without fresh supplies for 2 months now. The people there were starting to run out of food and medicine. Children were getting sick. The elderly were dying. And there was nothing Jake could do about it from his position behind this asteroid field. The UES Defiant was one of the last big warships still fighting. Most of the human fleet was gone now. Burned wreckage floated in space around every planet and moon in the system. The Zephyrians had been very thorough in their attack. They wanted to make sure humans could never threaten them again. "Any word from Admiral Carter?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "Luna Command went dark 6 hours ago. We think the enemy hit their communication array again." Jake walked over to the window and looked out at Earth. His home planet looked so small and fragile from here. Blue and white and beautiful. Surrounded by the black ships of an enemy that wanted to destroy everything humans had ever built. The Zephyrians called humans a mistake. They said people from Earth were too violent, too dangerous to be allowed to spread across the galaxy. Chief Engineer Pete Sullivan climbed up from the lower decks. His uniform was dirty with grease and his hands were covered in cuts from working on broken machinery. The Defiant was an old ship and keeping it running was getting harder every day. "How are we looking, Pete?" Jake asked. Pete wiped his hands on a rag. "Not good, Captain. The main engines are running at 60%. Life support is holding, but we're using too much power. And the weapons..." He shook his head. "We've got maybe enough ammunition for one more real fight." Jake had expected this news, but it still hit him hard. One more fight. Against an enemy, with thousands of ships and weapons that could tear through human armor like paper. It did not seem like enough. "Sir," Amy called out. "I'm getting a transmission from Earth. It's coming from the surface." Jake hurried back to his chair. Communications from Earth were rare now. The Zephyrians blocked most signals and the ones that got through were usually bad news. The screen flickered to life. A woman's face appeared, tired and serious. Jake recognized her immediately. Admiral Lisa Carter, the person in charge of Earth's defense. She was broadcasting from somewhere underground, probably one of the hidden bunkers that the enemy had not found yet. "All remaining fleet units," Admiral Carter said. "This is your new mission briefing. The situation on Earth is getting worse. The enemy has started bombing our cities directly. They hit New York yesterday, Los Angeles this morning. Millions of people are dead or missing." Jake felt sick. He had friends in both those cities. People he had grown up with, gone to school with, served with in the early days before the war started. Admiral Carter continued. "Intelligence suggests the Zephyrians are planning a final attack. They want to reduce our population to a level they can control. They see us as animals that need to be put in cages." The transmission started to break up. Enemy jamming was getting stronger. "All ships are to continue hit and run attacks on their supply lines. Buy us as much time as possible. There is something else in development, something that might change everything. But we need more time. The screen went black. Jake stared at it for a long moment. Something in development. What could Earth possibly have that would make a difference now? The planet's best scientists had been working for months to find new weapons, new defenses, anything that might help. But the Zephyrians were just too advanced. Amy turned in her chair. Captain, what are your orders? Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people. They had followed him through 18 months of running and hiding and watching their friends die. They deserved better than this hopeless situation. They deserved a chance to fight back properly. But they also deserved the truth. We keep fighting, Jake said finally. We hit their supply ships when we can. We make them pay for every day they stay in our system, and we trust that the people on Earth know what they're doing. Pete laughed, but there was no humor in it. Trust, Captain. We're down to one working battleship and a few patrol boats. The enemy has enough firepower to glass every planet in the system. What could Earth possibly have that would scare them? Jake did not have an answer for that. He could only hope that Admiral Carter was right. That somewhere, somehow, humans were developing something that could turn the tide of this war. Outside the window, a group of Zephyrian ships moved past the asteroid field. Their hulls were smooth and dark, covered in weapons that humans did not understand. They moved with the confidence of predators who knew their prey was trapped. Jake watched them go and made himself a promise. Whatever Earth was planning, whatever secret weapon they were building, he would make sure his ship survived long enough to see it used. The Zephyrians thought humans were finished. They thought the war was over. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. 3 days after Admiral Carter's transmission, the bombing of Earth got much worse. Jake Morrison watched the reports coming in from the surface with growing anger. The Zephyrians were not just attacking military targets anymore. They were hitting hospitals, schools, and refugee centers, places where normal people tried to hide from the war. The enemy ships moved in patterns around the planet, taking turns to drop their terrible weapons on cities below. Each blast left a smoking crater where thousands of people used to live. The aliens were very careful and very thorough. They wanted to break human spirit before they moved in for the final kill. On the bridge of the Defiant, Amy Rodriguez read through the latest intelligence reports. Her face was pale as she shared what she had learned. Captain, we intercepted another enemy transmission. They're planning something big. A final assault on Earth's orbital defenses within the next few days. Jake nodded grimly. Earth's orbital defenses were the last real protection the planet had. Once those were gone, the Zephyrians could land troops anywhere they wanted. The war would be over. Any word from the surface about this secret project Admiral Carter mentioned? Amy shook her head. Nothing, sir. All we know is that President Helen Walker authorized something called Project Last Stand. Whatever it is, it's being run by General Nick Barnes. Jake had heard of General Barnes. The man was known for taking risks that other officers would never consider. If he was in charge of Earth's last hope, then it had to be something desperate and dangerous. Deep underground in the Colorado mountains, Dr. Claire Johnson was working on the most important project of her life. She had been a physicist before the war, studying things that most people could not even pronounce. Exotic matter, dimensional physics, the strange rules that controlled how space and time worked. Now she was trying to turn her research into a weapon. The laboratory around her was filled with machines that hummed and sparked with power. Her team of 12 scientists worked day and night, building something that had never been built before, something that might not even be possible. Doctor, said her assistant, a young man named Carl Weber. The power readings are still unstable. Every time we try to increase the output, the containment field starts to break down. Claire looked at the readings on her screen. The numbers were not good. The device they were building needed enormous amounts of power to work. More power than any human machine had ever used before, and if the containment field failed while they were testing it, the explosion might take out half of Colorado. We need more exotic matter, she said finally. Without it, we can't maintain the field strength we need. Carl frowned. Doctor, we're already using every piece of exotic matter on Earth. The only way to get more would be to salvage it from the wreckage of our own ships. Claire thought about this. Human ships use small amounts of exotic matter in their faster-than-light engines. If they could collect enough pieces from the destroyed fleet, they might have what they needed. Contact General Barnes, she said. Tell him we need salvage teams to start collecting engine components from our destroyed ships, every piece they can find. Above ground, President Helen Walker sat in her office in what was left of Washington, D.C. The city had been hit 3 times in the past week. The White House was damaged and most of the government had moved to underground bunkers. But Helen refused to hide completely. The people needed to see that their leader was still fighting. General Nick Barnes stood in front of her desk, giving his daily report on Project Last Stand. Madam President, Dr. Johnson says she needs more time and more materials. The salvage operations are dangerous with enemy ships patrolling the wreckage fields. Helen looked out the window at the smoke rising from the latest bombing. How much more time, General? At least a week. Maybe 2. We might not have that long. Intelligence says the Zephyrians are preparing for their final attack. General Barnes shifted uncomfortably. There's something else, Madam President. Dr. Johnson's team isn't entirely sure the weapon will work. And even if it does work, they don't know what the side effects might be. Helen had expected this. Every weapon in human history had come with risks. But they were out of options now. General, how many people died yesterday in the bombing? 200,000, Madam President. And the day before? 300,000. Helen stood up and walked to the window. In the distance, she could see enemy ships moving across the sky like metal clouds. The Zephyrians think we're beaten. They think we're just going to lie down and let them destroy everything we've built. Everything we are. She turned back to General Barnes. Give Dr. Johnson whatever she needs, and tell her to hurry. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was leading his small fleet on another raid against enemy supply lines. The Defiant and 3 patrol boats had found a group of Zephyrian transport ships near Jupiter. The enemy vessels were carrying food and ammunition to the main fleet. All ships attack pattern Delta, Jake commanded. Hit them fast and get out before their escorts arrive. The human ships dove toward the transports, their weapons blazing. The enemy was caught by surprise, but they recovered quickly. Their return fire lit up space with deadly energy beams. One of Jake's patrol boats took a direct hit. The small ship broke apart in a ball of flame, taking its crew of 20 with it. Jake gritted his teeth and kept firing. Every enemy ship they destroyed meant fewer supplies for the fleet around Earth. Captain, Amy called out. Enemy reinforcements coming in fast, we need to go now. Jake ordered the retreat. The Defiant and the remaining patrol boats fled toward the asteroid belt, chased by angry Zephyrian fighters. They had destroyed 2 transport ships, but lost one of their own in the process. The mathematics of war were not in humanity's favor. Back on Earth, Commander Ray Phillips was analyzing intelligence gathered from captured enemy communications. What he found made his blood run cold. The Zephyrians were not planning to just defeat humanity. They wanted to reduce Earth's population to about 50 million people, just enough to serve as workers and test subjects for their experiments. Everyone else would be killed in the final assault. Ray immediately sent this information to President Walker and General Barnes. If Project Last Stand was going to work, it had to work soon. Very soon. Dr. Johnson received the salvaged exotic matter just in time. Her teams worked around the clock to install it into their device. The weapon was almost ready for testing, but every hour that passed brought the enemy closer to their final attack. As she made the final adjustments to the containment field, Claire wondered if they were doing the right thing. The weapon they had built was unlike anything that had ever existed. It could change the war completely, or it could destroy them all. Dr. Claire Johnson stood before the most dangerous machine ever built by human hands. The device was smaller than she had expected when she first started the project. It looked like a simple metal box about the size of a briefcase, covered in cables and glowing crystals. But inside that box was something that could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. Final power check complete, called out Carl Weber from his station. All systems are showing green across the board. Claire nodded but did not feel relieved. Green lights meant the machine was working properly. But properly for this device meant something that broke every law of physics she had learned in school. The crystals inside the box were made from exotic matter arranged in patterns that should not exist in normal space. General Nick Barnes watched from behind a thick glass wall. Even he, a man who had seen every type of weapon the military could build, looked nervous about what they had created. "Dr. Johnson," he said over the intercom, "are you certain this will work?" Claire looked at the readings one more time. The math was correct. The theory was sound. But they were about to test something that had never been tested before. Something that could change the rules of reality itself. As certain as anyone can be when they're breaking the laws of physics, General. Far above them, President Helen Walker was preparing to make the most important speech of her life. Intelligence reports showed that the Zephyrian fleet was moving into final attack position around Earth. They would begin their assault within hours. Ambassador Kate Lewis stood next to the president in the underground broadcast center. Kate had spent years learning alien languages and customs. She had tried dozens of times to negotiate with the Zephyrians. Every attempt had failed. The aliens believed humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist as a free species. "Madam President," Kate said, "I have to ask one more time. Are you sure about this? Once we make this threat, there's no going back." Helen looked at the speech in her hands. The words were simple and direct. No fancy language, no diplomatic double talk. Just a clear warning that would either save humanity or doom them all. "Kate, how many diplomatic messages have you sent to the Zephyrians?" 47, Madam President. "And how many times have they agreed to negotiate?" Kate's voice was quiet. 0 times, Madam President." "Then we're done talking." Captain Jake Morrison received the order to pull back all human ships from Earth orbit just as his patrol was about to engage another group of enemy transports. The message came directly from Admiral Carter, marked with the highest priority codes. "All fleet units retreat immediately to minimum safe distance. Do not approach Earth orbit under any circumstances. Repeat, all ships withdraw to asteroid belt immediately." Jake stared at the message. Withdrawing now meant leaving Earth completely defenseless. The orbital defense platforms would be destroyed within hours once the Zephyrian assault began. It made no sense unless... "Amy," he called to his tactical officer. "How long until we reach minimum safe distance?" Amy checked her instruments. 30 minutes at full speed, Captain. "Then push the engines past the red line. I want us out of here in 20. The Defiant and the few remaining human ships fled from Earth orbit like leaves blown by a hurricane. Behind them, 3,000 Zephyrian vessels moved into attack formation. The alien fleet was so large it looked like a metal moon orbiting the planet. High Admiral Zerth Kalen commanded the Zephyrian fleet from his massive flagship. He was an old warrior who had conquered 12 different species for the collective. Humans were just another primitive race that needed to be taught their place in the galaxy. "Communications officer," he commanded, "open a channel to the human government." The transmission reached President Walker in her bunker. On the screen, Zerth Kalen's alien face was cold and confident. He had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and his skin was covered in scales that shifted color when he spoke. "Humans of Earth," he said in perfect English. "Your resistance ends now. Surrender your government and military forces, and we will allow 10% of your population to survive as workers. Refuse, and we will reduce your numbers to a more manageable level through other means." President Walker stepped in front of the camera. Behind her, Kate Lewis began broadcasting the response on all frequencies so every ship in the system could hear. "Hi, Admiral Zerth Kalan," Helen said calmly. "I am President Walker of the United Earth Government. We have a counter-proposal for you." The alien leader's scales shifted to a darker color, showing his amusement. "You are hardly in a position to make proposals, human." Helen looked directly into the camera. "Withdraw your forces from our system within 72 hours, or we will end this war our way." For a moment, there was complete silence on the channel. Then Zerth Kalen began, What humans could only assume was laughter. The sound was like grinding metal. Human female, you have 50 ships remaining, we have 3,000. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. What possible threat could you represent? Helen's voice remained steady. You have 72 hours to find out. The transmission ended. Across the Zephyrian fleet, officers shared the same amused contempt for human desperation. Their intelligence reports showed that Earth had no secret weapons, no hidden fleets, no allies coming to help them. This was the last desperate bluff of a beaten species. But High Admiral Zerth Kalan had not survived dozens of campaigns by underestimating his enemies. He decided to accelerate the attack schedule. All fleet commanders, he broadcast, begin final assault immediately. I want Earth's orbital defenses destroyed within 6 hours. Deep in her underground laboratory, Dr. Johnson received the final authorization codes from General Barnes. Project Last Stand was approved for immediate activation. She looked around at her team of exhausted scientists. They had worked for months to build something that existed only in theory. Now they would learn if their theories were correct. Everyone to minimum safe distance, she announced. We're going to test this thing for real. Carl Weber hesitated at his station. Doctor, shouldn't we run more simulations first? Claire shook her head. We're out of time, Carl. The enemy fleet is moving into attack position. It's now or never. She placed her hand on the activation control. The device hummed to life, drawing power from Earth's magnetic field itself. The crystals inside began to glow with colors that human eyes had never seen before. Power levels rising, called out one of the technicians. Dimensional field generators online. Exotic matter containment stable. Claire watched the readings climb higher and higher. Soon they would reach the point where space around the device would begin to bend and twist, where the normal rules of physics would stop working. Above them, President Walker broadcast one final message to the Zephyrian fleet. This is your last warning. Leave our system now, or face the consequences. High Admiral Zerth Kalan's response came back immediately. Begin bombardment of the planet's surface. Show these humans what happens to species that refuse to submit. The first Zephyrian bombs began falling on Earth's cities as Dr. Johnson pushed the activation button. What happened next would either save humanity or destroy them all. The moment Dr. Claire Johnson pushed the activation button, reality began to break. The device in the underground laboratory started pulling power from Earth's magnetic field with an intensity that made the mountain shake. The exotic matter crystals inside the machine glowed brighter than the sun, but somehow the light did not hurt to look at. It was a different kind of light, one that came from spaces between normal dimensions. Power levels at maximum. Carl Weber announced, his voice tight with fear and excitement. Dimensional field generators are stable. We're actually doing this. Claire watched the readings on her screen climb into ranges that should have been impossible. The device was working exactly as her calculations had predicted. But calculations were one thing. Actually tearing holes in space was something else entirely. Above ground, the first wave of Zephyrian bombers approached Earth's atmosphere. High Admiral Zerth Kalan had sent his most experienced pilots to begin the final destruction of human civilization. Their ships carried weapons that could turn entire cities into glass craters. The lead bomber pilot, a veteran named Korix 7, checked his targeting systems as he dove toward the planet. His mission was to destroy the remaining government bunkers in North America. Intelligence showed that the human leaders were hiding somewhere in the Colorado mountains. Bomber Squadron Alpha, begin your attack runs, came the order from the flagship. Korix 7 armed his weapons and prepared to drop death on the world below. But as his ship entered Earth's outer atmosphere, something impossible began to happen. Space around his bomber started to twist. At first, it was just a slight distortion like looking through water, but it grew stronger quickly. The stars outside his cockpit began to bend and stretch into strange shapes. His instruments started showing readings that made no sense. Command, this is Alpha Leader. We're experiencing some kind of spatial anomaly. My navigation systems are going crazy. High Admiral Zerth Kalan received the report with confusion. Spatial anomalies were rare, and they certainly did not appear around planets without warning. Alpha Leader described the anomaly. But before Korik 7 could answer, his ship simply stopped existing. It did not explode. It did not break apart. It did not burn up in the atmosphere. One moment the bomber was there, and the next moment there was just empty space where it used to be. Not even wreckage remained. Command Alpha 2 here. Alpha Leader just vanished. He's completely gone. From his flagship, Zerth Kalan watched his forward screens in growing alarm. The spatial distortions around Earth were getting stronger. They moved in perfect spheres that expanded outward from the planet's surface. And anything they touched disappeared completely. All ships, pull back to safe distance immediately, he ordered. But it was too late for many of them. The expanding spheres of twisted space caught bomber after bomber. Each time the result was the same. The ships did not fight the effect or try to escape. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been built at all. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the asteroid belt as impossible things happened around his home planet. The Defiant's sensors were going wild trying to understand what they were seeing. "Captain," Amy Rodriguez called out, her voice filled with wonder. "Are you getting these readings?" Jake looked at his screens. The energy signatures coming from Earth were unlike anything in the databases. They showed power levels that should have destroyed the planet, but somehow Earth was completely unharmed. "What is that thing?" Pete Sullivan asked as he climbed onto the bridge. The old engineer had never seen sensor readings like these. "I think," Jake said slowly, "it's what Admiral Carter was talking about. Earth's secret weapon." On the Zephyrian flagship, chaos was spreading through the command center. Officers shouted reports of ships vanishing, of space itself becoming unreliable near the human planet. High Admiral Zerth Kalan had fought in hundreds of battles, but he had never seen anything like this. "Science officer," he commanded, "explain what we're witnessing." The science officer, a brilliant alien named Venth Cole, studied the readings with growing fear. "Admiral, the humans appear to have weaponized dimensional manipulation. They're creating localized tiers in space-time that remove matter from our reality entirely." "That's impossible. No species has that level of technology." "Apparently, Admiral, the humans do." Deep underground, Dr. Johnson watched her creation work with a mixture of pride and terror. The device was performing flawlessly, creating controlled, dimensional tiers that expanded outward in perfect spheres. Each sphere removed everything it touched from normal spacetime, leaving behind perfectly smooth voids. "How many ships have we eliminated?" she asked. Carl Weber checked the tracking systems. 800 confirmed, Doctor. The effect is spreading in controlled waves, just like the simulations predicted. Claire had programmed the weapon to demonstrate its power without destroying the entire Zephyrian fleet. This was meant to be a warning, not genocide. But even a warning with this much power was terrifying to watch. The dimensional tiers continued expanding outward from Earth, catching Zephyrian ships that were too slow to retreat. Each ship that vanished sent waves of panic through the alien fleet. They were witnessing something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. High Admiral Zerth Kalan received damage reports from across his fleet. 800 ships gone without a trace. No wreckage, no survivors, no way to understand what had happened to them. And the effect was still spreading. "All ships emergency retreat to outer system boundary," he ordered. "Maximum distance from the human planet." But even as his fleet fled, Zerth Kalan could not stop staring at the readings on his screens. The humans had not just built a weapon. They had learned to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality itself. After exactly 60 seconds, the dimensional tiers stopped expanding. The effect ended as suddenly as it had begun, leaving behind perfect spherical voids in space where 800 Zephyrian ships used to be. President Helen Walker stepped in front of the cameras for her second broadcast to the alien fleet. Her voice was calm, but her words carried the weight of absolute power. "High Admiral Zerth Kalan, you have just witnessed a demonstration of human technology. 800 of your ships have been permanently removed from existence. Not destroyed. Removed. They no longer exist in this universe or any other." Across the retreating Zephyrian fleet, officers watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Helen continued. "That was our gentle warning. You now have 24 hours to withdraw all your forces from our system. If you are still here, when the deadline passes, we will demonstrate the weapon's full potential." She paused to let that sink in. "We estimate that full activation would remove your entire fleet from existence in approximately 3 minutes. The choice is yours, High Admiral. Leave our system peacefully, or be erased from reality itself." The broadcast ended. In the silence that followed, High Admiral Zerth Kalen stared at the empty spaces where 800 of his ships used to be. For the first time in his long military career, he was facing an enemy with technology that made his own fleet obsolete. The humans had not just won this battle, they had changed the rules of war itself. Deep in her laboratory, Dr. Johnson collapsed from exhaustion. Her team rushed to help her as the device powered down. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but Claire could not shake the feeling that they had also crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Outside, Earth continued to orbit peacefully around its sun, protected now by the most terrible weapon ever created. But with that protection came questions that would haunt humanity for generations to come.